Hello, my name is Ben, and I am a senior user researcher for the Create stage. And today I'm going to be talking a little bit about the jobs to be done meta-analysis work that I've been up to over the past few months. You might be wondering what the heck is a jobs to be done meta-analysis and why are we doing it? Essentially, jobs to be done has been part of our practice for a while now, but there's never really been a systematic review or an attempt to synthesize these job stories into a cohesive whole. Essentially, we're missing out on the fact that jobs to be done can be a very powerful framework. It can help drive innovation, show us where our weak spots are, but only if it's done properly. So what I've done is kind of taken all of our job stories that are in our YAML file and try to break them apart, organize them, analyze them, squish them every which way to sort of figure out if there might be some kind of collective, interesting synthesis that we can do. But before I go any further, I want to make a distinction fairly clear. Jobs to be done is a framework, and a job story is a sentence that belongs into that framework. And a job story has, three parts: a job, a circumstance, and a need. And the job story itself is what is in our YAML file, not jobs to be done. Jobs to be done encompasses an entire methodology, or actually variants on a methodology. So when I talk about the statements that we're used to seeing with jobs to be done, I will refer to them as job stories. So this is our list of job stories. It's a giant YAML file, and it's not super useful and kind of intimidating. So this is where I started. And, there's not a whole lot I can do with this. So I'm going to kind of walk you through what my process was in getting this to a form where I felt like we could derive some value from it. So here we go. First step, get it out of the YAML file and into a spreadsheet. This is still really not great. As you can see, we have things up here like slug, short, JTDB, grade. Some things have grades. Some confidence, like what does a confidence heuristic mean? What does confidence low mean? What are, some things have a source. It's a mess, right? But, after some work, we kind of massaged the data a little bit. We can at least identify which stage and group and product category certain jobs are from. And start theming them out a little bit. And basically what this allows us to do is start counting stuff, right? So I presented or I released a report at the end of last quarter that sort of goes over this. So I'm going to move relatively quickly through these slides, but essentially, we looked at the distribution. So what we have, different stages have different amounts of job stories, different stage groups. Some have a lot, some have one or two. And even within product categories, some have 20, some have one. And so it's interesting to just sort of see what we've got so far. This was counting 127 job stories at the category level. We had a lot. We had a lot to deal with, but we also looked at what wasn't there, right? So what were we missing? If you count up all of the product categories, the groups and the stages, there's 111 divisions within GitLab that show up on that wonderful handbook page. And only 38% of them had one job story or more, which would imply that we don't have job stories. Yeah, which would imply that 62% of the product is without job stories, which would be bad. So job stories live at different levels. So there's stage, there's group, there's category ones. But, if you believe that, each of these stages should have some kind of addressable user need, and that should be represented in the jobs to be done framework, then we're only 30%, 38% of the way towards validating that, right? And I'm going to go over some of this, but like manage, sorry to pick on you guys. If you're here, you have 0 job stories. But monitor is doing great, 73%. So there's just like a real variance here, right? So we're all treating this differently. So basically, okay, I counted some stuff. Now what? Well, I ended the last report with sort of the next steps of looking at themes and overlaps, applying some parables throughout the process to sort of engage in consistency and look at our organization and process of how we do jobs to be done. So I'm going to start with a little bit of what's happened since the end of that last report. So as far as addressing organization and process, every group within Create has started the process of drafting a job performer canvas, which is part of how we want to address jobs to be done from a more job performer centric point of view. So, we put up our best guesses in this canvas, and then we go talk to people. We actually conduct interviews and validate the job map, the aspirational goals, the social goals, and we come out with something, that we feel confident about, that's validated in a real way. This also will continue once we have like a validated job map. We get to send out a survey based on the tasks that we've identified as part of the job performer experience. And we get to ask them their importance and satisfaction levels for each of these jobs. And what that does is allows us to calculate an opportunity score along our job map. So for instance, if, let's say, assigning a reviewer is very important, and I find that process extremely unsatisfying, that gives us a hint that that's an area we ought to focus on, right? We also looked at themes and overlaps, right? So the resulting job steps from these canvases can also be used as an input to better understand how all of the jobs interact and connect. This is from the code reviewer canvas that Matt Neerance and Andy put together, so thank you to them. But how will we do that, right? We have tasks on one hand and we have job stories on the other. Well, we need to compare apples to apples. So what I did is take all the job stories and basically pulled out the derived task for each of these, right? Like, what is the task that each of these things is addressing? And once we have that, I put them all into a mural and I started grouping them, kind of stripping away their origin, right? I don't care what group or stage they're associated with anymore. I care about the task and how it's related to the larger goal, right? Then I started like drawing connections. At this point, I was sort of unclear as to what exactly I was doing, but suffice to say, it just sort of like looked at things that were part of a workflow or building blocks that needed to sort of act as a prerequisite or come before or after something. But how to show what's missing, right? As I mentioned earlier, a lot of our product isn't represented by job stories, so I had no tasks to pull in. This sort of graphic in the middle shows you, what's there and what's not there. So there's a lot more red than green. And so, what I ended up on, and I'm not saying this is a perfect solution by any means, is just sort of pulling in the product areas grouped by stage that were not represented and putting them together with the job stories that we did have and put them all into like a giant graphic like this. And you can, caveat, I'm no longer a designer. This is not great, right? But it's something. And basically take a look, like here's our job map from the code reviewer canvas, right? It all kind of ties together in some way. But, like this, okay, so we have a map of tasks and product areas, and they're grouped by theme, and they're connected by dependencies and their workflows. But like, is it perfectly designed? Does it have all the relevant connections, all the right groupings, and everything you could possibly want? No way. Of course not, but it's a start. And, you might look at this and be like, wow, that's cool, but I have no idea what to do with this, right? This is like a spaghetti mess. So one idea is you could make a route through this, right? Think of a process, like a benchmarking workflow, and see if it can be mapped. So you might take something like this, right? Start drawing lines from one to another in a sequential order. And you might, turn it into something like a fantastic voyage through feature development. Where we have, if we zoom in a little bit here, solid purple is like existing job stories. A dashed line could be connecting things that don't have a job story. Each sticky is a task that's derived from our jobs to be done YAML file. And the colors of the stickies represent larger areas of work or themes. And you have those themes and you have the gaps that are represented. And yet that looks really twisty and turny, man. Like, how could we actually make use of that? Well, what I did is I kind of straightened it out and pulled it apart. And I ended up with something kind of like this, which is a little bit like, I don't know, kind of like a route map in a subway or something. And if we zoom in here a little bit, what I've done is taken the journey steps and actually given them a label, like what's actually going on here, kind of in a general term. And what we can also do is take a guess at who the job performer might be, because we're trying to, as part of jobs to be done, move towards a more job performer centric point of view, right? So who might the job performer be at any of these steps? And we can also trace the job story back to where it came from. So which stage or group did this originate from in the YAML file? And what we can do is kind of look at, okay, we took this plausible path through feature development. Which themes did that touch on? And which job performers had to take part for this to happen? So you have everything from, business planning, CI/CD, business metrics for themes, and product planners, code authors, safety testers, all of these people need to work together to get this larger job done. You can also take a look at how the stage groups were represented on this path, right? So for each of these, for this path anyway, it touched on 8 different stages, used 66 existing job stories, and touched on 15 product areas that don't have a job story yet. So it's clear that we have some work to do in order to fill out this story, right? So for areas without the job stories, what this map does is it allows us to say, okay, this is a place in this story that we need to focus on. Clearly write the initial code has more steps to it, right, than one. But that's all that's represented now. So we need to dig into this more and figure out what the job performer is doing here. And as a note, the IDE job performer interviews are currently being conducted. So this will be completed soon. And for things like adjacent steps where, you have a lot of different job performers or different stage groups working next to each other, or different themes that are kind of adjacent, right? You can kind of zero in now and think about, okay, these people or job performers or stage groups are going to have to work together in order to make this transition as seamless and user-friendly as possible. So, I don't know if deploy and plan work together a lot right now when it comes to like documenting product changes or ensuring the release is working. Maybe that's not something we need to work on, but it kind of fit here. But we can, examine those things and see. And as we move more towards a job performer kind of centric point of view, the places, our groups internally that are interested in what a release officer does can look at these places and see like, okay, a release officer and the code author are both here. Let's make sure those groups are talking to each other and figuring out like, okay, how does document product changes actually work, and sort of give a cohesive picture of that. Also, the parts of the workflow that have been validated, right? So in this case, our code reviewer, they can easily slot into the map. So as we continue to validate this, we get a clearer and clearer picture, right? So this is like, obviously a lot of steps, but we know that they're pretty good because we've talked to people and we've done some synthesis to get to this point. Okay, so we've got a few things. What's next? This is obviously still a work in progress. I'm going to be cleaning up these visualizations and trying to get them into some kind of format that can be reused and altered and serves some kind of utility as we move forward. I'll also be creating a step-by-step guide in the handbook with examples and templates of how to run through this new jobs to be done process. And then, of course, I will have a report detailing this journey, what we've learned, and where we go from here. With the big hint of organizational change is hard. And kind of like, just to give you a preview of what's the end goal here, right? I want us to be aligned on terminology, right? I want us to speak the same language when we're talking about jobs to be done. We should all know the difference between a job story and jobs to be done. We should all be speaking the same language so that when we're talking about these things, we're not misconstruing what we're saying. I want us to be aligned on process. This is a lofty goal, but I'm going to propose something out there. It's up to teams to sort of take it on. I'm going to try to hold up the work that we're doing and create as an example of what you can do and where it gets you. And yeah, organizational change is hard, but I have a firm belief that like a strong jobs to be done program will end up resulting in a superior product. So look for the final report at the end of Q2. And thank you. And particular thanks goes to Adam, Valerie, Jackie, and Andy for all of their support. And I will take questions.
Amazing, Ben. I've got the first couple of questions. So one I like to always ask, just what's been the biggest surprise you've come across so far? You've done a ton of work, heads down work. It's daunting. You're brave for diving into this. So there's probably lots of surprises, but what's the biggest one?
Wow, I should have expected that question. I think some of the initial work of just pulling these things apart and just how variant they were. A YAML file has this like kind of veneer of structure, right? Where it feels like, oh, this is all nicely organized. It all looks nice and tidy. When we're in fact like a collection of job stories was not well organized at all. So uncovering that was maybe a little bit of a surprise.
Got it. And my next question, you may have covered a little bit of it in a previous slide, but would love to know how you envision team members using this information once you're completed with it.
Yeah, my hope is that other teams can look at this and see that we're getting tangible benefit from adapting this process, right? We get a validated idea of who our job performers are in each stage and what the opportunity score is for different parts of our map. And I'm going to try to make it as easy as possible for them to do that, and to self-serve on that. And I hope that, at some lovely point in the future, this map that I've created is completely full and validated. And we have this like amazing artifact of like, hey, we really understand our product now and how our customers are traversing it.
Awesome. Thank you, Ben. Will.
Thanks for the presentation, Ben. One of the things that you spoke to in your deck was that the YAML file wasn't really the best like single source of truth as you were kind of uncovering things. What do you think or expect we should use moving forward to document and track jobs to be done across our organization?
That is a great question, Will. I've been thinking about that a lot across the research that I've been doing. I agree that the list, like a single source of truth in a list form, is valuable for things like, okay, I just want to see what job stories there are out there. I'm hoping though that we move more towards using, something like this map, where you're not just looking at stories in isolation. You shouldn't just be concerned with, the little area that you're looking at. We want to kind of broaden and foster a more holistic understanding. So something that like allows you to see kind of more in the peripheries of what you're focusing on, and kind of seeing that, okay, I'm really looking for job stories that relate to code review, but I know that, I can see like this butts up against, safety testing or vulnerability management or whatever it is. And so, I want to be aware of that and possibly talk to those teams as I'm doing my design or my research or whatever. Which again, may be a really lofty goal, but heck, shoot for the stars, right?
Yeah, and I'm excited to see where this goes as you continue to make progress on it. I think Erica's up next.
Hey, Ben. Yeah, mine is just that it seems like if you step all the way back, we're going to be able to get a map of kind of the job to be done stories across the meta workflow with our products. And so I just wanted to confirm that that's something you think we might be able to take away from this research. Yeah, okay. And go ahead.
No.
If so, because you're nodding, so if so, I would even like lead with that as the organizational change framing, right? Is like what we don't have now is this holistic map of the user's journey with our product. And in the end, after we can land this stuff, we'll be able to look more cross-functionally.
Yeah, I could have been more clear about that.
No, you have plenty that you're doing. So I was just thinking like that could just be a lovely bookend to already fantastic work. And I just wanted to confirm that I was not going out of scope.
You are not, no.
Okay, good. Good job, Ben. Thank you for doing this.
Thank you.
I have the next one. So the existing jobs that you were referencing, I'm wondering, how do we reconcile that with this new performer-based process? Can they be trusted? Is this something where we should expect them to redo it using this new process? What are your thoughts?
Again, very good question. My research has led me to conclude that there's a wide variance in the rigor that was used to derive these job stories. I could spend like another 6 months diving into the rabbit hole of each specific job story and how well researched it was, but I don't think that's a good use of time. I think I would rather put something out there that shows, hey, if you do it this new way, you can get these benefits. I don't really want to dwell on the past too much. I think if teams have job stories that are working for them, I don't want to force new work on anyone. But I'm hopeful that by showing the value add that kind of redoing this might get you, that teams will sort of take it up as they can. Does that suffice as an answer?
Yeah, I like that. You're implying they should do it, but you're not saying they have to do it, but they should do it. I like that.
Smart man, Justin.
Take it. All right, I got the next one too. Would you say that your Metro map is a living document? And this kind of, I think, feeds into what Erica was saying to some degree. Is a living document that we should continue to update and contribute to, so it becomes sort of the single source of truth.
Yeah, 100%. That's my hope. I'm hoping that somebody with better Figma skills than me can figure out a good way to sort of add to this, so that as teams go through this process, it becomes more complete and more validated and serves as, exactly that single source of truth for our job stories. Yeah.
Cool. Thank you. Vidika has a read-only.
Yeah, I just wanted to make this point that I think it would be very beneficial to have something of this sort to refer to at the discovery stage, so that we can at least frame better questions to ask to our users. Because we learned it a very hard way in secrets, that we need to collaborate with the author not. And just looking at this map, it gives so much of clarity that if this was handy like long back, we could have like understood that at a much earlier stage.
Yeah, awesome. I mean, I love to hear that, because I feel like there's so much overlap and potential collaboration and synergy between the work that we all do. And we're pretty good at working together, but sometimes we don't even know that we should work together, right? So hopefully this can illuminate some of that.
All right, I don't see any more questions. So thanks a lot, Ben and Emily, for taking the time to present. They were fantastic. I definitely look forward to, seeing the full version of the jobs to be done map. It'd be great to dive into. All right, we can end a little early today. Everyone can have some time back. Thanks a lot for attending and for the great conversation. See you, everyone.